كتاب من الثروة إلى القوة، يعني أنت تحدثت في هذا الكتاب أنه كيف تحويل الثروة إلى قوة، وأنه القوة الاقتصادية ليست تلقائيا ممكن أن تتحول إلى قوة عسكرية واقتصادية. سؤالي تحديدا، كيف يمكن أن تتحول الدول الغنية إلى قوى عظمى؟
It's a very interesting question, because what I was grappling with was, you see so many countries around the world. Some of them are rich, some of them are not, and some are able to make a mark. Some are able to act like great powers in the world, to shape the world, not simply be shaped by the world. Why is that? So you look at a country like Japan. It's very wealthy. For much of the last 40 years, it was the second richest country in the world, but it didn't seem to have a very powerful profile in terms of shaping the world. And then there are others that were not as rich that were. And what I came to realize is that you have to have a kind of tradition of leadership that believes it wishes to, first of all, institutionally translate that power, building diplomacy, investing in having, of course, a large army and defense forces, so people respect you in that way, but also diplomacy, cultural diplomacy, and perhaps more important than anything else is that idea of the realm of ideas. You have to have ideas about what kind of region you want, what kind of world you want, how would your policies, your foreign policy, help push that kind of world forward? If it is that ability to set the agenda, to have ideas that actually go forward and push the agenda, that's what makes the biggest difference. People often look at the United States and say, well, it's the most powerful country in the world because it has all the money, it has all the... Some of that is, of course, true. You have to have power, you have to have wealth, but a lot of what it is that the United States has a set of ideas about what would make for a good world, what would make for a...
من الذي صنع الأفكار؟ يعني روزفلت هو نقطة تحول. الحرب الإسبانية اللي كانت الأمريكية 1898 هي نقطة التحول. أين كانت نقطة التحول؟ لأنه يعني في 1860 و65 كانت أمريكا دولة غنية لكنها كانت قوة ثانوية. ما الذي جعل أمريكا تتحول من قوة ثانوية إلى قوة لها نفوذ عالم تشكل النظام العالمي؟ وين نقطة التحول؟ البعض يشير إلى روزفلت، البعض يشير إلى الحرب الإسبانية.
You know your history very well. I would say it really begins with Woodrow Wilson in World War I. So you remember World War I, all of Europe goes to war, but they're all going to war for their narrow interests. They have narrow national interests. The Americans come in right at the end of the war and change it completely, because they make it so that the British and the French win, the Germans lose. But what Woodrow Wilson, who is president, then says, we are going to infuse this war with meaning. We are going to give it some meaning. We can't just have, all these people cannot have died for nothing. So this is going to be, he says, the war to end all wars. And we are going to build a new system with a League of Nations, with an international organization. We're going to ask countries to follow international law. Now, the whole thing fails because he can't get the United States to get involved. But it's the beginning of an idea that I think is very important. And you're right that then Franklin Roosevelt picks up that idea at the end of World War II and says, we're going to do it right this time. And people don't focus enough on how radical this idea was, that we're not going to go back to the world of just every time there's a war, the person who wins the war takes money from the person who loses the war. That was the system for all of human history, that the victor took the spoils, as they said, to the victor belong the spoils.
هل هذه يعني هناك مدرستين مشهورتين في العالم اللي تتبنى الواقعية السياسية أو الدفاعية الكلاسيكية. الكلاسيكية الواقعية تقول إنه الأمم يعني تتمدد عندما تستطيع، والدفاعية الكلاسيكية تقول إن الأمم تتمدد عندما تشعر بالخطر. أمريكا أي المدرستين؟
I think America at the end of the day is more of a classical realist power because it hasn't really been threatened that much. America's the almost unique situation for America is that it lives in a part of the world where it is bordered by two vast oceans and two friendly neighbors, and who are very small countries anyway. So it has never faced the kind of set of threats that people face, and it's one of the reasons I think it has been able to expand, to extend its influence around the world, because people know that the United States at the end of the day is living 6,000 or 8,000 or 10,000 miles away, sheltered in its own land. It's not trying to come and occupy parts of the world. Whereas you look at the contrast today with China. As China grows rich, and it grows very rich and influential, the problem is it's surrounded by 16 countries. As China becomes bigger, India gets worried, Japan gets worried, Vietnam gets worried, South Korea gets worried, Australia gets worried. So, and I don't think the Chinese realize that they are not like the Americans. The Americans had a unique situation where they can expand and they can still not threaten. So it's a very lucky situation to be in.
واضح.